let's look at some temperature conversions. So once again, you're going to want out your conversion factor sheets, because you'll notice underneath the mass, length, and volume temperature conversions, or I'm sorry, mass, length, and volume conversion factors, there's a temperature conversions. And what this is are the equations that you're going to be using. So temperature conversions are a little bit different than your English to metric and metric to metric, because for these ones, you're going to have an equation where you will plug in numbers and solve. So let's start with this first one here. This first one, we are starting with Kelvin, and we are going to Fahrenheit. Now, these are usually the most difficult because this is going to require two different steps. Because if you look at the equations given to you for temperature conversions, write them off to the side here, we have degrees Celsius is equal to Fahrenheit minus 32 divided by 1.8. And there's parentheses around that top guy. Then we have Kelvin is equal to Celsius plus 273. And last but not least, Fahrenheit is equal to Celsius times 1.80 plus 32. So these are the three possible equations that you can use. Now notice, none of these equations go directly from Kelvin to Fahrenheit, right? Kelvin only goes to Celsius. So that's what makes this problem difficult, is you're going to have to go to Celsius first and then go to Fahrenheit. Okay, so I'm going to write my plan. I'm going to go from Kelvin to degrees Celsius, and then I'll go from degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit. So I'm going to need two different equations. For the first step, I'm going to use this equation. So I have K is equal to 273. So how do I solve it? Well, I'm going to plug in what was given. So 127K, I'm going to plug in where the K is. So I have 127 is equal to degrees Celsius plus 273. So think of this degrees Celsius as an X, and you're trying to solve for X. So how am I going to solve for X? Well, I need to get rid of this 273. Since I'm adding 273, to get rid of it, I want to do the opposite operation. So what's opposite of addition? Subtraction. So I'm going to subtract 273. Whatever I do to one side of the equal sign, I have to do to the other. So if I subtract 273 from this side, I also need to subtract 273 from this side. So what happens is, here I get 0, right? So it cancels. And here, 127 minus 273 gives me negative 146. So that means that 127 Kelvin is equal to negative 146 degrees Celsius. So I have my degrees Celsius now. So next I need to go to Fahrenheit. So in order to go to Fahrenheit, I'm going to use this bottom equation. Let's go ahead and erase this. So my degrees Celsius is negative 146. Now what I'm going to do is I need to figure out degrees Fahrenheit. So using this equation, I'm going to plug in the negative 146 where the degrees Celsius is. So negative 146 times 1.80 plus 32. Plugging that into my calculator, I'm going to get negative 230.8. How many sig figs? Look at your original number. 1, 2, 3. So I want 1, 2, 3. So I stop at the 0, look at the number next to it. Does that stay a 0? No, it does not. We're going to round it up to 230 units are degrees Fahrenheit. All right, let's look at the next one. The next one is going the opposite direction. This time we're starting with Fahrenheit and going to Kelvin. Now remember, we can't go directly from Fahrenheit to Kelvin, so it's going to follow this same path here. Okay, we're going to go to Celsius first, which is just the opposite direction. Fahrenheit to Celsius, Celsius to Kelvin. So if I want to get from Fahrenheit to Celsius, I'm going to use the top equation where Celsius is equal to. So degrees Celsius is equal to, and where that degree Fahrenheit is, that's where I'm going to plug in this number. Okay, so it's 134 minus 32, and then I'm going to divide that by 1.8. So 134 minus 32 divided by 1.8, and I get 56.66666. So a lot of numbers. Now this is in degrees Celsius, so I still need to get to Kelvin. So to do that, I use the only equation I have that has Kelvin in it. And I'm going to plug in this degrees Celsius where that degrees Celsius is in the equation. So that's where my 56.666 is going to go. I'm going to add 273 to that. Once again, I have 3 sig figs. So this is going to round up. So I get 329.6 in my calculator. But since I want just 3 sig figs, I look at the number next to it. That 9 needs to round up. So it's going to round up to a 10, which makes that 2 round up to a 3. So I get 330. Now, since I want 3 sig figs, I need this 0 to count as a significant figure. So to do that, I just add a decimal after it. Putting that decimal there tells me that 0 matters. And then end, of course, with the units of Kelvin. So that would be the correct answer for that one. Let's look at the last one. So what makes this last one difficult is the negative sign. You just want to make sure that you include it when you're plugging it into the equations. Now this one, Fahrenheit to Celsius, is just one step. Okay, so to go from Fahrenheit to Celsius, we're going to pick the equation where Celsius is equal to, so that we can plug in that -12 where the F is. Okay, so degrees Celsius, and here I'm going to plug in my -12.6, subtract 32 from it, and then divide by 1.8. Don't forget that negative sign. One, 2, 3 sig figs. I want 3 significant figures in my answer, and that gives me -24.8. That's temperature conversions.